Hey folks, Sean here, and in this episode, I want to talk to you about artificial intelligence, but more specifically, how a lot of the advice out there is basically just telling everyone to use AI for everything, and that's not particularly productive. At least for me, when I receive advice like that, I don't really know what that means. And what I mean by that is the approach that they're recommending that you take is missing a lot of steps for me. I'm always looking for more of like a step-by-step guide that I can follow, or a process at least, that helps me interpret what that means to better understand when I should be thinking of it, and then how I should choose to leverage it if and when I decide to do so. So that's what I try to build. And that's what I try to talk about on this podcast. The systems that I've created, the free email course that I have, it all intends to walk you through the process in a step-by-step fashion, because it's easy to just throw random generalities out there like, oh, just use AI. I find that that oftentimes comes from people who don't really know what those things mean, and a lot of times they haven't actually used them themselves to build software. I've used it to build two software products just this year. I'm working on a third now, should be ready before the end of the year. So I've got a little bit of experience about knowing what, quote, just use AI actually means. So I want to talk to you about this stepwise process that I use so that you can follow it too. Because here's the deal. What I think is the most important takeaway from the development that artificial intelligence has experienced, call it in the past year, is that it makes the really complex really simple, which is a dramatic change in terms of the tools that we've had available and what they're capable of. This means that your software can do much more complicated operations in a much simpler way. So it's an exponential improvement. Previously, we had to do a lot more work to achieve those types of dramatic changes, and that also required us to walk users through something that was a bit more involved, which I'm sure if you've been in this world a while, I can say for sure is something that slows down progress for most founders, entrepreneurs, and people that want to build SaaS businesses. Because the more complex your software is, the harder it is for your users and your customers to figure it out. Okay, so that's the advantage, but how do you leverage it? What does actually just use AI really mean in terms of if you're ready and willing to do so? So, from my perspective, when I'm building software, I'm always building for businesses. So I'm almost exclusively focused on B2B, or selling business to business, software as a service, or SaaS. So that means that the business operates typically in a specific industry or industries, offers a specific type of service, and they do so to solve a unique problem. Now, in that case, that means that any business for which they're trying to make more progress themselves, they have problems that are preventing them from making more progress, providing more value, solving more problems, solving different problems, whatever it is. And each of these businesses has one of these stories to tell. It's your job to figure out what that story is, to better understand what's standing in their way of more progress. And I often relate that to the concept of a bottleneck, which you'll hear me talk about a lot. There's a bunch of great books on this, The Goal, The Phoenix Project. I'll link to them in the notes. But it talks about this concept of a bottleneck, which is commonplace in businesses. And the analogy and the visual I often refer to is like an automotive manufacturing assembly line, right? The assembly line, which is popularized by the Ford Motor Company, where you're putting components on a vehicle. It starts as a pile of raw materials or parts, and then it winds up rolling off the assembly line as a fully assembled car, a product ready to be sold to the public or whomever. Now, every business has one of those assembly lines. It may not look exactly like an automotive manufacturing assembly line, but every business is a series of steps they go through, whether they be digital, virtual, physical, whatever. And as part of that process, there is always a bottleneck somewhere. That bottleneck is what's preventing them from making more progress. Additionally, if you are able to identify the bottleneck, that means that if you improve that step in the process, the one that's taking the longest, you're going to make the biggest improvement from the smallest change, right? So if you're following me so far, that's how you find the problem we're solving for a business. You do your discovery, you do your research, and you find out what's slowing them down from making more progress. Once you know what that is, you figure out how you can build a better solution around that problem. And that's your opportunity to leverage AI, right? AI will help you, like I just said before, do a lot more with a lot less effort because of how capable the tool is. It's a significantly better tool. And eliminating a bottleneck is simply a process of figuring out how I can take the inputs into that step and more quickly, effectively, efficiently produce the output that they're looking for. That's really, when you boil it down to it, the basics of all the AI software that I've designed, built, and shipped this year. It takes something as an input, produces something as an output, and eliminates the bottleneck from the business process. My podcast show notes tool dramatically cuts down the time and dramatically improves the results of creating show notes from podcast episodes. My Shorts Maker tool makes it seemingly automatic to go from a long form video to a bunch of short form videos, which are very popular these days, right? But they're all eliminating a bottleneck along the critical path of operations for a business. You, on the other hand, when you're looking for and have identified these bottlenecks, when you're talking solutioning, as in how you're going to solve it in a better way, AI dramatically improves the possibilities for you to make a significant improvement in progress for these businesses. Now, I don't know what you're working on software wise. I'm happy to learn more about it if you want to email me, sean@nextstep.io. But even though I don't know, what I do know is that based on how much I've leveraged AI to make all the software significantly better than the previous generation without these AI tools, that AI can help make your software better. It's just an element of figuring out how. So use this process in order to do so.